Right, muckers, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, good to have you along. Now, I'm just taking a bit of a break from editing the video you're about to watch, because while I've been making great progress with the dumper, well, I should say dumpers, plural, I took the opportunity to nip over to the US last week and get some behind-the-scenes, up-and-close and personal footage of some World War II armour. And for those of you that love the aviation stuff, some of that for you as well. Anyway, listen, enjoy the video, but at the end of this video, I'm going to be asking you a question, and basically whatever you guys choose is going to be what I film next time I'm in the US. So, enjoy. Right, muckers, something a little bit different today, and this will be a little bit of a longer video, so you can choose to do it all in one sitting, grab yourself a beverage or two, or come back and watch it in bits. Choice is yours, but as I said, we're going to get a bit of a behind the scenes look today here at the American Heritage Museum. So as you can see, there is a ton of stuff to see here. It's not all just about America's involvement in various parts of history. You've got stuff that represents the British in the desert. You've got the Germans, the Russians, more German stuff. There's tons of stuff to see here. And like I said, it tells the story of all parts, both Allied and Axis forces in World War II. In this part, this is as I said, the World War II part here. Okay, so those of you that can remember the Hollywood movie The Dirty Dozen, Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, Donald Sutherland, Telly Savalas, people like that. Well, not only is this the same type of half-track, this is the one from the movie. Now they've got a big old, I think they're a Maybach V12 in these, but they're a huge thing. They were used for towing artillery pieces, such as the 88 here, things like that. And obviously you got all the stuff that goes with an 88 all around here. And they could tow these big 88mm flak guns, or they could be used against tanks, they could be used against artillery. They're such a versatile weapon. Anyway, they could be towed with the Kraus Mafia, the big half-track. So actually, as I said, we've got a bit of access today, so why don't we go and have a look? Alright, so once you're in it, she is a big old beast. Quite straightforward, and it obviously, because it's a half track, it tells you where your steering is, because obviously the front wheels turn, and then it applies, I assume, at the same time it should then apply pressure to retracts as well. Like you're driving a crawler, but you don't have levers. So you've got links and the legs, obviously left and right. So there we go. Brake everything down here. Gearbox over here. It's all very straightforward, but it's huge. It is actually huge. There's even room down beside. You got another little seat down here, look. Enough room for two others there. And then you got room for rifles and stuff over there. It's a big old driving platform, this. So like I said, what a just gigantic piece of kit. and I'd imagine it sounds incredible when it's running. So here we have the Panther. That's a big old bit of kit. And this one fought in Poland, as I remember, and I think basically they scuttled it. They'd put it on the ice, and eventually when the ice melted, it fell through. That's where it lay, on the bottom of the riverbed. So it was then recovered and then restored. Okay, we're up on the back deck on the engine plates there, and yeah, look at that. Let's have a little look, shall we? Okay, so we're in here now, as you can see in the turret, and that's the blocks you would look through. So you could look outside once the hatch is closed. There's the main gun here. So you've got a gunner over there. Oh, he's got a gun over there, that side. So cramped in here. So the guy that's actually aiming the gun, he'd be sat down here below my feet, and he'd be looking out through that. So I assume you'd have the guy who's the actual loader over this side, and you'd have all those over there full of ammunition. It's like that. And he could load here and then throw all the spent cases out through the back there. It is so confined. It's just an awful, awful place to be. Okay, so now we're going to slide down into the driver's position. So we can look out through this block here and here, look. We've got our gauges there, our start panel there, more instruments. It's all very basic in here. In fact, it's kind of nicer in here than it is in that turret. Again, you got periscope blocks there and some spares, but there is actually more room. So down here we've got some pedals, and then we've got transmission here. Okay. Again, having not been on the Panther driving course, but to all intents and purposes, I'd imagine that here and this one here, I guess that these are our steering brakes here. And as I said, honestly, I've been in a lot worse than this. So back there, you got your turret and everybody is in there. You could just make it through between the two. Then you got a gunner through this side as well with a hatch operating. Which I assume is, yeah, operating another machine gun. But yeah, this is actually better than I thought. But you know, everything considered, the driver's position on the Panther is probably the best position, comfort-wise. Probably one of the first pieces that everybody aimed at, though. Oh, and if you want to know what it's like hatch-wise, well, there you go. not too bad. And the top doesn't swing over, it swings around down. So some of you may recognize this. It's a Higgins boat, or more commonly known as a landing craft, the D-Day landing craft, like you saw in movies such as Saving Private Ryan. Now obviously these were made fairly quickly, fairly easily, comparatively to other more complicated boats. And Higgins had their boatyards in Louisiana, and they and other boatyards, you know, went into full flat out mode to build these to enable the troops to be taken off the ships and then taken to the beach, then head inland. But it's incredible to see, and you obviously have seen the, as I said, the movie Saving Private Ryan, and what that must have been like to be there, and as that ramp lowered. So try and imagine, actually there's no point trying to imagine, because we'll never ever understand what it must have been like to be hunkered down here, you know, as you're approaching the enemy beach, trying to stop yourself getting covered in cold wet spray off the sea before you even hit the beach, you know. And as you can hear the engines throttle back, and then you gotta move forward, and that ramp goes down, and then you're just open to enemy fire. I mean, the main thing would be to try and get off as quickly as you could and find some form of cover, be that an obstacle or you know, a crater, artillery crate or something. But I don't know, just can't even imagine what it must have been like. Now, speaking of Saving Private Ryan, I think any of us that have seen the movie will recognise this. It was nicknamed the rabbit in the movie, but it's a Kettenkrad, and yeah, like a very small half, but it is a very small half-track, with a motorcycle wheel at the front, tracks there. I've always wanted one of these. When they were of, let's just say, affordable value and cost back in the 80s, I was too young, didn't have the money, and then when I was old enough, had a bit of money, they were way too expensive because of Saving Private Ryan. Anyway, let's have a little look at this here, shall we? Alright, so obviously got your steering at the front with the handlebars. And there's some sort of pedal down here. What that's for, I don't know. But you have your gears here. I imagine that's like a high and a low, actually, if you something like that, looking at that, because you've got 1 and 4, so it'd be 1, 2, 3, and I'd imagine flip through with this possibly 4, 5, 6, and you've got reverse up there. So yeah, the seat's actually quite nice. It's quite a nice suspended seat, believe it or not. Doesn't feel too bad, but as far as leg room goes, it's not that great. Yeah, what a bit of kit. And then obviously you can put people on the back there. Engines here, so that would keep you warm if you're out on the eastern front to some degree. What a little beauty. I think we actually need to have this out at some point. They have some wonderful battlefield reenactments here at the museum. Outside, as I said, there's a airstrip, and then there's a big field and some woods and stuff, and several times a year they hold these different themed battle reenactments. And I think I shall need to speak to Rob and say, look, I think this needs to come out and need to have a little bit of a play on it. All right, T-34. I'm not going to climb in this because I just can't be asked. Basically, look, there's a lot more room in this one. And, yeah, that's where the driver is there. Obviously, the turret will be up there. I think you can see that. But the difference between the German and the Soviet tanks is that, I mean, just look here. The Germans would have had that back at the factory, said, this isn't acceptable, you can grind that down, and, you know. But the Russians' way of looking at things was, well, it's going to probably only last a few hours. It's there, it's done, it's good enough. Get it out, get it fighting. And that's exactly what they did. As I said, the German stuff, the finish on the German stuff, it was typical German engineering. The same as it is today, you know, your Mercedes, your BMW and stuff like that. You know, they always aim for that little bit better. Got to be right. Where the Soviets were just like, look, there's your turret, that's cast, that's done. Is the metal cold yet? Yeah, that's good enough. Right, plonk that on there. And just everywhere else is just rough and ready. But it's good enough. Get it out. It's going to have a shell through the side in a minute. Don't worry about it. Oh, can you imagine the threads on the welding form? Oh no, look, it's just terrible. Oh no, they obviously haven't had enough penetration there. Which is ironic, really, isn't it? Oh, look at that. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. But don't forget, everybody was involved in the production. So the men were going to war, as were the women. The Russians had women pilots, and you know, but women and men alongside each other were building tanks. None of them were welders. You know, 1 minute they're working on a farm, or they're just a housewife, and they've been told to weld tanks together. You know. But like I said, oh no, that's just not right there. Oh, they should have changed the setting on the torch, and they should have done that there on the. Oh no, look, like I always said, this has lasted over 80 years, hasn't come apart. Don't worry about it. So, what do you want to look at next? So we've looked at some German stuff, we've looked at some Russian stuff, and we look at some British stuff. So we've got the Churchill. Now the Churchill always looked a bit of a chunk of just very badly, poorly designed. But do you know what? They were actually a fantastic tank. And they actually had a very good rate of survival in battle for their crews. Now just before we get in and have a look, this one is actually known as a crocodile. Because where there was normally just like a gunner's position, this actually had a flamethrower installed. And they were pretty effective. And these towed basically a Bowser for the petrol, gasoline. And that was armoured. It was an armoured trailer that went behind these and fed through. Yeah, and they would just squirt flame out. Anyway, let's have a look inside. Alright, so inside here, it's even, obviously it's a smaller turret, but it's even tighter than in the German Panther. But there's your breech block for your gun, and yeah, there is very little room in this at all. So that's where the actual kind of could sit and see everything, but yeah, there's not a lot of room in here. Okay, so in the Churchill Crocodile, over there is the driver's position on this one, with all these controls, gear selector, instruments, steering, everything's over there. And this side here is where the guy that operated all the gubbins for that flamethrower. How mad is that? Now, this is a genuine 109. Alright, it's a genuine Messerschmitt 109. This isn't a post-war Spanish-built Bouchon with a Merlin in. This isn't a replica. This isn't a hodgepodge of bits. This one was actually sent to, I think it was a factory in Austria in '44 to have a load of upgrades done. And because of the war and everything carrying on, it just had to stay there. They couldn't get completed in time. And in 1945, it was captured. And anyway, here she is today. So, for all those that are into the technical side, this, as you know, has got an inverted V12 with fuel injection. It's a Daimler-Benz. So where a Merlin was a V12 like that, 6 and 6 down that side, this is 6 and 6 down this side. That's why the stubs are down here and not up here. But yeah, this is a genuine 109. Oh, and for those of you that like all this sort of stuff, they had guns up here, and also coming right through the centre there. But anyway, while we're here, I'll give you a bit of a treat for the aviation enthusiasts. I'll give you a little bit behind the scenes with this. Okay, so the canopies on these, they don't slide back, they go that way. And they're not light, believe it or not, they're fairly heavy. There we go. Get some light on here once we're in. But for the moment, it's all a bit of a struggle, I can assure you. It's certainly not like getting in a Spit or a Hurricane or a P-51. Right, so there we go. Let's just see what we can do. Oh, nowhere near as easy. Oh. Right, I'm not sitting on a chute obviously, so I'm down lower than I would be normally. I'd probably let's have a little look, shall we? So, instrumentation. To be fair, you could probably work most of this out, what the alternative is in a, say, a 51 or a Hurricane or something. Down this side, let's have a little look what we've got down here. There's your trim wheels down there. Okay. Your throttle there. Mixture. Okay, where are you? I'm trying to think where your flaps and your undercarriage are. Oh, probably there. Okay. Yeah, that could be your gear. I haven't read the pilot's notes on the 109, I must admit, but could I get it to Cheech? Given half an hour, I think I could probably get a note out of it, definitely. With a flight jacket on, there's not a huge amount of space to your left and right where your shoulders are, but I think once you, it's again, I think this is a bit like a Spitfire. You don't so much, you know, sit in and fly it as strap it on and wear it almost. It's like a early wingsuit type thing, because you are actually part of it. But no, actually more pleasantly surprised than I thought I'd be about it, but fairly uncomplicated. But there we are, the Messerschmitt 109. There's your sight and a pad there to stop you getting, you know, hurting your head if you're leaning forward or you have a crash or whatever. Not that I think that's going to do you a lot of good. And I'd imagine with this cockpit arrangement, I think it would be a case of, you obviously wouldn't try and push it open, so I imagine that was just a case of jettison
the canopy, because you'd you know, like with a Hurricane, if you could jettison those as well as Hurricane and Spit, but they were more to slide them back if you could. The slipstream would take them, but this is, I think, just bang, it just goes, jettison and goes. But yeah, so there we are, sports fans. The genuine Messerschmitt 109. Now, although there's some fantastic stuff that you can see here, but it's not all about, you know, wonderful aerial victories or big battles with tanks and, you know, destroying the enemy. War has obviously another side to it, and I think it's most poignantly represented here by this. This is exactly what you'd think it is. It is one of the rail cars that was used to transport people to concentration camps. You know, a lot of this rolling stock was just put to one side, and then some, like this, were brought back into use because there was a shortage, and it carried on just being used as a, you know, a freight wagon. And then they were retired and again just stood up. And this one, as I said, with all the numbers, and when they were restoring it, they could see that it had been used post-war, but they could then see the paint that it had on during the war, and with the numbers and rolling stock numbers. So obviously a lot of the wood was rotten because of its age, and they was replaced, you know, exactly how it would have been originally. But there's also parts of it that are original. These are original parts, and there are other original parts used. There's just so much to see here, but like I said, I'm not going to ruin the surprise and everything, you know, for those of you that want to come and visit. But I'll just pick out one or two of my favourite items here. But there is so much to see, and everything tells a story. Alright, here's another favourite of mine, this P40. Alright, here's a story I always like to tell people about this P40. So it's a very early P40, which is great in itself. Let's jump to something else. So take yourself back to World War II. You know, there's a very famous squadron that flew these out in the Pacific called the Flying Tigers. Some of you will have heard of that. Well, this engine, because obviously an engine has full traceability, and all the components have traceability, but the numbers on this engine show that it was used by the Flying Tigers. Now that's equivalent now to let's just say someone, one of the Lancasters, we'll say, like Just Jane or the BBMF Lancaster, and looking at the serial numbers of an engine that they were going to fit, that's one of the engines that was overhauled after they came back off the Dams raid. The 617 squadron had it, you know. Now it would be like that engine was actually one of the ones on the Dams raid Lancasters, and that would be a big thing. Back then it was just like, is the engine any good? Yeah, it's just been overhauled. It's one of 617's engine. Oh, just put it in that 50 squadron Lanc. Something like, do you know what I mean? It'd just be like, just get on with it. You'd think nothing of it. So now, 80 years later, that's a Flying Tigers engine in this very early P40. So that's incredible. So you got an engine that, as I said, you know, was used in aircraft of a famous squadron back then. But then that goes a little bit more. This P40, not only has it got a Flying Tigers engine, this is one of the only aircraft that survived the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now during the attack, this was up on jacks inside a hangar being worked on, and when the Japanese attacked the airfield, most of the aircraft were destroyed, but two pilots managed to get a couple of aircraft up and actually score some kills against the Japanese attackers. So we have got a genuine Pearl Harbor survivor. Actually survived the attack on Pearl Harbor. And it's also fitted with a Flying Tiger's engine. So, yeah. Is she a little bit special? I kind of think so. But what a lovely aircraft. Oh, you want to know the story behind that and why it's painted like that? Look, they've got a really good YouTube channel here at the American Heritage Museum. And I'm going to put the links to that channel below this video. Because there's two brothers here, Andrew and Matthew, and they just go into great detail into most of these exhibits. And they're going to be doing more and more as the channel grows. But as I said, I'm going to let them tell you the story about this. And I'll put the link to this YouTube channel, the American Heritage Museum. I'll put it in the description box below this video. So this is an F-105 Thunderchief. Now over half the Thunderchiefs produced were actually shot down over Vietnam. So it's quite a significant aircraft. They were really in the thick of it. And it's a big aircraft when you get up close. There we are. Okay, so let's have a little look in here. In the old ejector seat. Now this one would actually take me a while to figure out, if indeed I could. So yeah, there's really is a lot in this that I don't know. Not being a jet jockey, I haven't got a clue. I mean, some stuff's the same, obviously, but drag chute. To be fair, the vision's not too bad. Once your canopy was down, but yeah, there's a lot in here. There is a lot in here. Now, the pilots that survived being shot down over Vietnam, they were taken to this place, which became known as the Hanoi Hilton. It's a very dark humour thing, but that's what they called it. Now, this exhibit here, what you can actually see, okay, these stones, and inside here, it's not on today, but I can probably just show you a little bit in here. Oh, here it comes, actually comes on. So, I'm not going to take you in there because that's where the actual cells, and I mean the stone, concrete beds, the brickwork, everything that you are seeing here in this exhibit. And then they talk you through with some of the original pilots who were shot down and were kept captive here for years. These doors, as I said, the stonework. This isn't a reproduction. This is actually genuine. They were just going to take it down and put some new buildings there back in Vietnam. Now they want just to get rid of it and whatever. This is the actual stuff taken down stone by stone, as I said. Now, if you come here and go in the exhibit itself, I'm not going to ruin that for you because it is so emotional in there, especially when the guys are telling you their story. And then you think they were actually sleeping and living for years in these stone cells on these basically just concrete plinths as beds and stuff. Right, muckers. Now to sort of bring this to an end for this time. This is more like the private collection here. Eventually they're all going to be in the new proposed extension. Well, I say extension, it's going to be about 3 times the size of the museum. And it will be dedicated to aviation. Now, what we'll do is next time I'm here, we'll actually have a really good look around this collection here, plus some others which are at other locations. Things like the P-38, the Spitfire, Hurricane, B-17, B-24, PBY, to name but a few. For me, a personal favourite, because you just don't see them anymore, despite them being really, as far as the battle in the Pacific goes, one of the aircraft that turned the tide. And a lot of people think, oh, it's like the Corsair and all that. No, it's not. It was this. The Dauntless. Big old dive bomber. You can see the dive brakes there, look at that. So that's obviously when they go down to attack, that's what slows them down, these big old dive brakes. But she's sort of fairly as is, it's not all been tarted up. She's in her working clothes. I love seeing that. Alright, just while we're here then. Alright, so there we go. Everything normally where it normally is, so no surprises here. Big old wings on this. Old dive brakes, look. But anyway, look. Here's something that is a bit different, because you're at an angle like that. You can obviously see here, but you can't really then tell how far off the target you are. So, down there. There's a viewing panel down there, so you can see through to give you a better idea of your target and how high you are off stuff. Give you a bit of perception. All helps when you're sort of basically flying blind. But yeah. The Fiesler-Stork. So these were in a German observation aircraft. They would fly above the battlefield and give directions to infantry or tanks below what was going on. They could fly virtually in the hover. If the wind's strong enough, they could actually start creeping backwards. But you see, you got these slats on the leading edge and the big flaps at the back there. Incredible aircraft. Incredible. The observer there in the back. And then there's the pilot's view. And like I say, if you look how the doors are made, so that's in line with the fuselage, you'd think, but it's not. That bit is. So this bit bulges out, and therefore the pilot can basically put his head outside the aircraft and look down through here, so you can actually view straight down. Wonderful thing, wonderful bit of kit. Now, so that's a observation aircraft. The US, and both the British and the US, used these Piper Cubs and similar aircraft to observe the battlefield and relay messages by radio. But some of these, such as this one, were fitted with rockets. And what they would do is they would come behind the tanks, literally at like grass top level, and if there was an incline and the enemy were the other side, or there was some like anti-tank guns or whatever, this would suddenly just pop up over the hedge, aim down, launch the rockets into the enemy position and just peel back and go for cover. Absolutely incredible. And these aircraft were credited with kills. I think this one itself is credited with kills. Anyway, fantastic stuff. Oh, of course,
Steerman. This was the trainer that most pilots would start their flying career on. And then from basically you would start on something similar to this, like a Steerman. Then onto a T6, and then onto like a P-51 or the Avenger or whatever. If you then went to bombers, after flying that, you would go on to something more like that over there. So you got multiple engines, 2 engines, and then from once you got the grasp of flying with 2 engines, or without in some cases, they'd cut an engine off, you'd have to learn to fly on one, and that's the whole point why you'd fly multi like that. You would then go on to the bombers, B-17s, B-24s and stuff like that. So there we go, muckers. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've enjoyed the little look behind the scenes, getting access to stuff that, to be fair, most don't. Of course we'll be back. There is so much more to see. You've just seen a fraction of it here. Anyway, like I said, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed this little private tour behind the scenes. But anyway, it's time for me to get packed and get back over the pond. I'll catch you that side. There we go. I hope you enjoyed that little exclusive behind the scenes tour there, muckers. Now, here's the question. If you were given the opportunity to take a bit of kit for a bit of a rip round around the track, out in the field, and then through the woods and whatever, and you were given the choice of a Sherman tank and one fitted with the big V8, the big 4 GAA. I love the sound of them. Or, other end of the scale, the little small German Kettenkrad half-track motorbike that we saw. They are the only 2 choices. We're not Panther or T-34. No, German tank or the half-track Kettenkrad. Put your answers in the script pit below, in the old comments section, and let us know. Next time I go to the States, whichever one's most popular, I'll twist a few arms, grease a few palms, and we'll take it out. Right, I hope you enjoyed that, muckers. And like I said, your continued support does make a big difference to the content that we can bring you. So, yeah, you lot want to go for a walk now, don't you? Yeah, of course you do. So we'll catch you on the next one. Do well.